Well, let's get started. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this very special evening. My name is Guy Walker. I am the president of the Endowment for Youth Committee. Endowment for Youth Committee was founded in 1986 on the Lower East Side of Santa Barbara by the pioneering and community activist Melvin Mel Ritchie, and later with the help of Cliff Lambert and others, began to serve the needs of a much underserved and underrepresented group of young people in the city of Santa Barbara. Today, the Endowment for Youth Committee is focused primarily on serving the educational, social, and cultural needs of African American students in Santa Barbara, grades 6 through 16. Additionally, we believe that we are uniquely positioned to help improve the overall quality of life on the Central Coast by bringing resources to our community that will provide a better understanding of issues that have historically had an adverse impact on the underserved and underrepresented in our community. We bring these resources to the community using a platform which we call EYC Presents. Through our various partnerships and collaborations, we will be able to bring speakers and performances that are designed to raise awareness and to promote community through shared experiences and common goals and our common objectives. Tonight's event is a perfect representation of that type of collaboration. This evening would not be possible without the support of some of our partners and friends. I want to publicly thank some of those friends. Gwen Laurie Firestein of the Montecito Journal, James Joyce III of Coffee with the Black Guy, our friends at the beautiful and historic Libero Theater, Dunn School, and in particular their Director of Communications, Jennifer Dubois, Brandon Scott, who I call our technical genius, Cross Andrade of Uva Design, Reggie and Joanne Pagling of Dark Water Winery in San Ynez Valley, and last but certainly not least, my team at Wealth Management Strategies. Of course, we ask you to join us this evening in order to introduce and welcome someone new to our community. Dr. Kalyan Balaven is the incoming head of Dunn School. Dunn is one of several independent schools on the Central Coast. Dunn was founded in 1957 and serves a co-ed population of middle and high school students. It has both a day and boarding population with students who come from all over the country and internationally. Kalyan is coming to us from Northern California, the Athenian School located in Danville, California, where he currently serves as Director of Teaching and Learning. Kalyan has an extensive background in whole student education and has a track record of building innovative programs, including the Infusion Dashboard Consortium, a group of some 120 schools recognized by the National Association of Independent Schools. He also serves on the California Association of Independent Schools Accreditation Board and is a liaison to the Mastery Transcript Consortium. He began his professional life as a lawyer, and during a particular difficult case, he realized his true calling in education. Eric Niles, head of the Athenian School, summarizes Kalyan Balaven's, Athenian's Director of Teaching and Learning, is a community leader, an incredibly able and innovative administrator, and a master teacher. In experience, demeanor, and commitment, he is fully prepared to be a head of school. Kalyan is married to Fatima, and they have 2 children, Husna and Mateen, my man Mateen, that is becoming my Faz's best friend. We are delighted to welcome the Balaven family to the Central Coast, and as an alumnus and Dunn School board member, I am particularly excited about Kalyan's selection as the first person of color to serve as head of Dunn School. I present to you Kalyan Balaven.
Thank you, Guy.
You're very welcome. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you too.
So, Kalyan, welcome to Santa Barbara and the Central Coast. our remote audience of nearly 175 folks, and our small but mighty in-person audience are pleased to welcome you to our community. And in spite of the challenges created by COVID-19, we embrace you, and albeit socially distanced, we embrace you, and look forward to getting to know you better in the weeks and months to come. So again, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yep. Next, I'd like to introduce the person who's going to moderate the conversation. James Joyce III is a community leader and founder of Coffee with a Black Guy. Coffee with a Black Guy is an innovative social impact movement that seeks to merge the tactile and digital worlds to bring greater understanding, compassion, empathy, and love to our shared global community. For much of the past decade, James has served the people of Santa Barbara as the district director for State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. James has served on various advisory boards in the area and was a founding advisory committee member for Impact Hub Santa Barbara. He currently serves on the board of the Common Table Foundation, formerly the Lois and Walter Capps Project, the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists Education Foundation, Sanctuary Centers of Santa Barbara, as well as the National Board for Student African American Brotherhood, also known as SOB. Additionally, James serves on the advisory board of the Ventura County Leadership Academy. He is active with Santa Barbara Young Black Professionals and is a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Forbes magazines featured James and his work with Coffee with a Black Guy in a piece published during the COVID outbreak. He has been recognized for his outstanding leadership in aiding anti-racist conversation and has served as a guest speaker for various corporate and nonprofit organizations around the country as we search for answers on how to coexist in more respectful and equitable communities. In short, James knows how to have hard conversations in ways that help all sides grow. James is helping to bring people together in Santa Barbara and really across the state and the Central Coast. With all his experience in community building and collaboration, it is no wonder that earlier this year, James took the bold step in announcing his candidacy for mayor of Santa Barbara. I am honored to call this man my friend and my brother, and I am pleased to ask him to come take his seat with his important engagement with our guest of honor on the topic of inclusion as a model for a more resilient community, a private-public collaboration. James Joyce III.
Thank you so much, Guy. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Well, all of that. This is just a conversation.
That's right.
This is just a conversation. Gives you a little bit of background on kind of who we are and kind of what our goal is here today. But I think that at the root of both what you and I have connected over the past few weeks is that at the root of all of this, it just starts with a conversation.
That's right.
And so that's what we're doing here as you're kind of getting kicked off in our community. We're welcoming you to our community.
That's right.
Great appreciation to our sponsors, EYC, the Libero Theater, and all the others who have been very supportive of these kinds of conversations because as we said, it's the start. Right? And so let's go ahead and tell us, like, what is the start? Like, tell us a little bit about your background. Where are you from? Where were you born? Where did you go to school? Like, all at once, right?
All right, fair enough. I'm a public school product. So public schools all the way through to law school. And never even thought about independent schools before.
Geographically,
geographically Bay Area.
Okay.
And growing up in that vein, I never knew the independent school world existed. I think it existed in film. It existed in literature. Every now and then there might be a student I might see with a uniform on going through. Okay, so I'm you know what I mean? But it was never in my consciousness growing up. So public school product all the way through. My mom, West Indian immigrant. And so she was really into education. So I grew up, while a public school product, I grew up with a person who became a public school educator, but also spent time after school educating people in the neighborhood. She was pretty adept at, she was, knew a lot of languages and whatnot. So there's always kids from the neighborhood at the house, always. You know, wherever we were staying, wherever we were living, always kids come home. Oh goodness, you know, the house is never, you know, just for us.
Oh yeah.
And she'll be sitting with them, helping them read, young kids. Working on math, making with her own worksheets and stuff like that. And these are kids she identified during her work day who didn't get the support during the day. So I used to see it all the time. So education was really always around me. And her thing was, you got to go keep, you know, don't stop, right? And so education was always a part of my upbringing. So stayed in the Bay Area, and this is my first time outside of the Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll treat that with respect, man. We'll treat that with respect, indeed. We're glad to have you here.
Yeah.
So your family now, I heard a little bit about, you know, guys making some buddies with your kids there already.
That's right.
And that's part of, you know, in my work in public service, I've always had this concept of community infusion. When I'm working with staff or training staff up, I'm like, you know, don't just do a job, don't just have a career, but infuse yourself in the community, and that makes your job easier. Right. And so I get the sense that you're very much the same, because your official start date isn't until July 1st.
Yeah, no. That's what they told me.
Yeah. And you've been on the ground. You've been very active with you know, kind of the transition.
Yeah, it's important.
Indeed.
You know, because you can't wait till the first day to build the relationships.
Right.
And so just getting to know people, understanding the lay of land, and building a sense of place has been really important for me and my family.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Tell me a little bit about your family.
My wife's a Persian American immigrant, grew up in Iran during the war. We met actually in Iran. I was on a college trip, you know, and met some people, and then came back, had a roommate, you know, who was half Persian. He ends up living in the Middle East. He gets married. He comes back, visits me, invites me over again. Says, hey, I got to introduce you to somebody.
Yeah.
I know you. You're gonna really. Oh, come on. I'm telling you, you got to meet her. And it was that, you know. And I remember, because I'd gone there for like a short trip. This is my second time over there. Short trip, and you know, the visas situation is you get a limited visa. Right. And I was like, I got to stay here a little longer. So I had to keep going to extend my visa. And so it's long lines. I must have went that visa extension off like 6 times. I was extending it.
That's
you
love,
know?
brother.
Yeah.
That's love.
And so, and interesting, her journey is that she was an independent school kid.
Okay.
She was a private school kid. And she comes here. And then, you know, her career has been education too. She's been a teacher in the independent school world.
Okay.
Yeah. And then our two kids that grow up, you know, with a mix, you know, some public, some private school, but in different communities as we navigated through different places in the Bay Area and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And give me age ranges right now.
12 and 8.
Okay.
So basically 20 and 18.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Oh yeah.
Good deal. So Central Coast, you'll be coming here, and I definitely, we're going to dive into the inclusion aspect.
Yeah.
But, you know, as we're getting to know you guys, what do you like? What are your hobbies? What are some things you like to get involved with?
Well, I love basketball. Yeah, I know. You know, you caught me the day after, right? It wasn't supposed to go down that way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, big Warriors fan.
Okay.
Big 49ers fan. So a lot of Bay Area sports teams. I love watching movies. Okay. And I like watching movies late at night when the theater is kind of empty, right? So I can, you know, have the experience.
Kind of like this, right? Right. We got about a couple folks here in the audience. It's an experience.
Absolutely. Different types of music. Love to read. And I'm a bit of a comic book nerd and geek. Yeah, you know, just so you know, really, you know, lower the waterline, so to speak. Reveal the iceberg. That's what I wanted to say. I'm a you know, Comic-Con type of guy. Okay. You know, costume. Okay. Yeah, I do that.
Yeah. There's a few folks you should connect with in town.
Yes, indeed.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, all right. So we've got your background partially.
Mhm.
Went to law school.
Mhm.
Um, where did you go to law school?
I went to
Remind me?
UC Davis.
UC Davis,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Why law school?
Because I didn't go to medical school.
All right,
I
I heard that.
Yeah, no, it was, my mom always wanted me to get a professional degree, not to stop. And so when she said go, keep going. And I didn't know where that would lead me. And I thought I would, make an impact being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I got to law school, the experiences were such that I realized that this might not be for me,
Right.
but I didn't want to be defeated.
Right.
Right. I was like, I'm going to, finish this up. And, I tried my hand in a few things. I tried my hand in the prison law clinics and immigration law clinics. And it was just really challenging where, I would work really hard, but I was working within the parameters that were, given to us.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be a situation where someone is facing something serious and really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And despite all the hard work couldn't change that.
Right.
And it was frustrating. At the same time, while I was in law school, I was also teaching classes.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, in the classroom, I'm having all this impact, right? And students are coming up to me and saying, oh, that was really transformative, and I'm going to go to college, I'm going to do this and that. And so I started to realize I could make greater change class by class than I could do case by case.
Right.
Right.
I heard that.
Yeah.
And being nimble and flexible enough to do that pivot.
Yeah.
And not what do they call it? Like not having the prescription dictate how you're going to move forward in the world.
Absolutely.
I think that's something important, and I'm sure we'll get back into that because a lot of the principles that I'm aware of at Dunn School where you'll be going, it ties directly into that, right? And so you end up seeing that the better impact, I guess, walking in your passion, walking in your path, is more in the educational space, right? Then how do you find a niche in inclusion, kind of known within the industry as a leader in inclusion?
Well, I think my education in inclusion began with my education in exclusion.
Right.
I think every human being fundamentally knows what it feels like to be excluded.
Yep.
Every human being. And there's folks that are excluded on a larger scale based on the ways in which we've constructed society, right? Which is also a form of exclusion. And going through public school, and I emphasize that, and that was, it's important for me that, folks understand that. Going through public school, the classroom is comprised of the world that's around me. It's not comprised of the people that have access, it's everyone. And in that sphere, you encounter different forms of exclusion. It could be as benign as you're the last or not the person picked for whatever's happening.
Right.
It could be that, no one sees your hand raised, right? But it can also be insidious. It could be you're being targeted based on a misread of the way you act by an educator who's well-meaning, but thinks you're misbehaving. But maybe you're not really misbehaving. Maybe you don't.
Now, the tone I'm picking up, you didn't read this stuff in a textbook.
No.
Okay, right.
No,
this is lived experience.
It's lived experience.
Right.
And so going through realizing that. And so that's the first layer of education. And then there's things that you pick up as and when I went to undergrad, it was a history degree, but it was at Cal. And so at Berkeley, a lot of ethnic studies classes and all of that. And so there's exposure, academic exposure too, which is some of the language behind it. But really, let's strip it all down to that feeling, right? It's this acrimonious taste in your mouth. And you know what it feels like.
Right.
You're like, this, and it stays with you.
Right.
And there's moments that everyone, when you revisit that moment, you shudder right now, right? And so I never want another student to go through that. And that was the impetus behind inclusion. Right. It's like, if there's a way for us to prevent that, if we can be so empathic that we understand that everyone in the classroom, every student that's in our school needs to be taken care of, needs to be seen, needs to be heard, needs to be valued. If we could do that, and they can feel included in the promise of whatever mission the school said it was doing, oh my God, that's beautiful, right? And so it's and it seems insurmountable, but it's possible.
Right.
You know why I know it's possible?
Right.
Because every single person can mention the teacher who touched them too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Understanding those areas of opportunities, points of influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's deep and appreciative, and that's the kind of passion that we need in our educational spheres.
Yeah.
Not everybody with the same focus, right?
Yeah.
But I guess we kind of went to the 201 class without starting at the 101 class.
Right.
So we started at inclusion. The 101, I guess, would be diversity, right?
Right.
And I guess my understanding and my explanation as to why diversity is important, right, is I have a good friend of mine. He's a history major and really into history, and so he kind of got me into watching old World War II documentaries and things. And so we were watching some stuff about dogfighting and how the planes during the World War II era. They always had two planes, right? You had your main pilot, then you had your wingman. The wingman's job was to cover your six, because as a pilot, you can't see what's on your 6 o'clock. So you need somebody to cover your six. The thought process of what, right? The thought process of diversity is to cover your six. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you can't see. And in order to be effective, you have a 360-degree view of, where whatever it is, whatever the environment is that you're utilizing, right? That improves your view and improves your ability to make decisions because you see more things.
Yeah, and it requires a few things. I think that's where inclusion becomes important in relationship to diversity. We could talk ad nauseum about the research that's out there as a diversity makes you better, right? Companies are realizing that. Schools are realizing that. The diversity actually furthers the outcomes of whatever enterprise you're involved in. Well, it can, but there's a secret ingredient that's missing. Just adding diversity into the mix doesn't necessarily involve everyone in the process such that we're all learning from each other and becoming better because our blind spots and our perspectives have grown. And so one of the things that's interesting is, let's go back in time. Before diversity was part of the conversation, it was multiculturalism. All right, multiculturalism, this is really important. We need to cover all the cultures and different parts of the world and so on and so forth. So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna have Taco Day. And Taco Day means we're multicultural. Right, that's the egregious bad example, right? And some schools were like, no, we're gonna change curriculum. We're gonna add this, we're gonna do some field trips and did that. But they realized we can't be multicultural unless we have diversity.
Right.
So, okay, let's focus on diversity. That's great. Now we have the people in the room. But why are they in the room? Are they in the room so they can to make your brochure and your website look better? Is that why they're in the room? Or are they in the room for a different reason? How do you really involve everyone? And so that idea of involving, the sense of belonging, how do you develop that? That's that variable of inclusion, right? You know, it's that gap, right?
That's deep. Now, this inclusion model that you brought forth to independent schools.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that and kind of, I guess, kind of like the elevator. Conferences on this. As well.
In short, the idea, the impetus behind creating an inclusion dashboard came from a frustration around the fact that in order to explain what inclusion was, I had to explain it using narratives, right? At the time, I was the Dean of Equity and Inclusion. My job was to make sure every student was taken care of. And oftentimes, students would be in my office and they would tell me stories. They would say, you know, this is going on, this is happening. And sometimes the stories are deeply painful, but they may not resonate with everyone, but because they don't understand the context. So I'd carry the story and I'll utilize the story to try to make some change. The reality is not everyone's moved by narratives. right? Boards, administrators, school leaders are moved by data. So I was like, how can I capture this in data? So I started look to the universities. You saw Cornell, you see Berkeley, the Cal State system. They had started to measure inclusion, start asking questions, and started cutting it against diversity metrics in order to see where the gaps occurred, and started to make changes as a result. I was like, schools should be able to do this. And so we chased after it, and we went through a process to create that. And as I went through the process, I was encouraged by my head of school, contact other schools doing it. As I calling up all these schools, they were like, oh, can you tell us can you share your day? And so slowly, by word of mouth, a consortium formed. And initially it was like 6, 7 schools, first retreat, 20 schools, second retreat, 60 schools. And, the last retreat we had 126 schools. Right. Yeah.
And it appears that there were various metrics that went into this, right? Yeah. Give me a snapshot of some of those metrics.
So the first and important question you need to ask the community is, what does it mean to thrive? You need to ask the students, what does it mean to thrive? And they'll tell you. You go through this process through questionnaires or surveys, et cetera. But you're trying to articulate, what does thriving mean in a school culture? And then you look at what is the average. How does the average student thrive? And then let's look at different communities, right? And different genders, and you start looking at this and you start to realize that not everyone's thriving the same way. And that begins the first process. And then you have to put it through a sieve. And that sieve is the mission, right? Every school has a mission or a vision statement, a promise. Every school promises something to you, right? So put it through the promise and see, are you delivering on the promise? If the promise is academic achievement, who's achieving academically? Mm-hmm. If the promise is teacher-student relationship, who has relationships with teachers and who doesn't, right? So look at the promise and then evaluate it, right? Mm-hmm. We're talking about perception, right? At the end of the day, a dashboard, an inclusion dashboard, is a narrative. It's just a stronger narrative, right?
So one of the ideas, or one of the principles of Dunn School is the whole student education, right? And that's the territory you're stepping into. Yeah. How do you see inclusion as part of that mission?
Oh, it's core to it. And it's core to it because, okay, so let's take whole student education. A lot of people use that language, whole child education, whole student education. What do they mean? They mean not just educating the mind. They mean going beyond the mind. Sometimes they'll articulate, it's the physical readiness, moral readiness, emotional, all different aspects of what makes you a human being. And that schools have a role to play in that. That's whole student education. Most schools have that language, but most schools don't go deeper than that. If you go to Dunn, what's beautiful, Dunn has core values, where it actually okay, this is how we do it, right? But in order for a person to develop the ability to have the social, the emotional connection with other human beings, to be able to participate in a society that's multifaceted and diverse, they need to be able to be inclusive. They need to develop the skill set of empathy. And they can't do that, right, if inclusion is not in the forefront.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that it just seems to be a natural marriage, right? Of making sure that you're addressing it. When I hear whole student education, having a former journalism background and having to go in and pick at the problems of the community, at the root of these problems quite frequently are the lack of coping skills. Whole student education provides those coping skills, right? It works through that process. And I think that's what we need more in our societies. Right. So independent schools, cool, great. Do your inclusion thing.
Yeah.
How does that translate to a community?
The phone rang. See, I was doing the inclusion dashboard piece and, we're writing about it and I get a call. I got the call from San Ramon Valley Unified School District, 40 schools, all public schools. They were local to the area where our school, the Athenian school was, where we're doing the dashboard. They're like, can we talk about the inclusion dashboard and the inclusion work that you're doing? I said, why are you interested now? How did you hear about it? And so we read this. But what's the interest? right? Is it altruistic or is it reactionary? Well, it's reactionary. So what happened? The school board was bombarded with parents who were frustrated because things were happening in the school. There were complaints around racial intolerance from some students, things that had happened in different high schools, and people were, I mean, they were at the school board, and I listened to the tapes, and it was painful. It's painful to hear. It's painful to hear when a young person is talking about, how adults who are there to serve. And so you hear that. And so there's a frustration. They're like, how can we do this? Right? How can we all do that? So that's why I think there's potential for the community, because that phone rang. Because it's a need in private or public sectors. It's a need everywhere. This could be a powerful partnership, right? Of private and public sectors doing the work together, right? Such that we help inform each other of the best practices that we all have, because every school is good at something.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I can learn from school A, can teach school B, but if we don't know what that something is, because we haven't been measuring how inclusion looks, right? But if we did, if all the schools were kind of measuring at the same time, asking the same questions, and you start to realize, oh, that school down there in Santa Barbara, this middle school really is doing a great job with young women in relationship to STEM classes. Maybe I can go there and realize what's going on and do some research and realize, okay, it matters who you hire. Look at the curriculum. Look at how they've situated things. Okay, you take notes. You make your school better. So we make all schools better, right? If we're all a forest of trees, right?
Right, a forest of trees.
Forest
Look
of
at
trees,
this.
right? Each tree, like, you know what I mean? And on each tree, you got what? Low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
Right? You got growth areas.
Yep.
Right? And you have, the trunk. I call that the affirmation, things that you're doing well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, so it's a treat to have you with us, man. It is a treat to have you.
Yeah.
And really, I think that's the vision that we're trying to go towards here, right? Is that, in some of your recent writings, you had an op-ed in the Montecito Journal.
Yeah.
I believe it was that, or maybe I'm just reading a lot of your stuff, but you referred to the fifth estate, right? And this is the nonprofit sector, the independent schools, the partnership with public schools, and I guess kind of taking it back again, the first three estates being our estates of government, the branches of government, the fourth estate being the media, and then the fifth estate being this branch of nonprofits, independent schools. What role do you see that in shaping and forming community?
I think there's conversations happening in the fifth estate. That's not part of mainstream vernacular, mainstream conversation. But you know who's paying attention to that conversation? Young people. Because it's part of the conversation in social media. And if you want to incorporate young people now, in this day and age, you can't feed them a promise from the 1950s, 60s, 70s. You can't. We have to do better, right? And in order to do better, we have to individualize the attention that they're seeking. Think about TikTok, Instagram. It's about individualized attention. So this is me, this is my story, this is who I am, see me. But if you start to treat children like some sort of, industrial product, right? Which schools have been designed, right? They stamp them,
It's not a widget factory.
Graduated, right? They stamp you, right? Factory line. But if we say, no, we can't, the idea of standardizing everyone is an old model. We have to individualize. We have to see each student for what they bring, all their layers of their identity. I started, right? We're talking about all the surface stuff. Oh, you're married, public school product, all this kind of stuff. Then I dropped the waterline and said, oh yeah, Comic Cons. You're like, oh, right? But see, I dropped the waterline. That was me telling you something about me that makes me vibrant and I have a lot of passion for and fun with, right? Yeah. Students are doing that all the time. But if you don't validate that part of their personality, then why would they actually be there, be engaged, be themselves, being, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, realistically, thinking back on your own educational experience, for me, like, that's what kept me coming back.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's not the formal education in the classroom. It's those connections that you have with friends, with teachers, with, you know, faculty members, and it's the stuff below the line.
That's right.
You know, the administrator that comes to all the sporting events and cheers you on.
Oh, yeah.
You have a different relationship
Absolutely.
with versus the one that never shows up.
That's right.
So consistency. There's something to be said for consistency as well.
In building that relationship.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So as we're talking about consistency, I took some notes here as we're welcoming you to our community, and some of the feedback. Inspirational to staff and students. These are things that are being said about you. Words like energy, warmth, enthusiasm. Where do you get that from? Where does that come from in your culture that you bring with you every day, that folks who've been interacting with you just so far in the community are saying these things already?
That's interesting. I don't know if there is a particular place. I mean, the model for me on how to treat people is from mom, right? You know, how she treated people. And, you know, if you want students to leave a school, to go out and to do good in the world, right? If that's really do good in the world, whatever your good is, you go and do it, right? Then you have to model it, and you have to do good unto them, right? And the people around you. And so you put whatever you put out, you get back. You know, I like to have a positive life around me, positive energy around me.
Right.
So I had to move down to Santa Barbara.
It's a vibe,
It's
right?
nice
It's a
out
vibe
here, like
out
a
here.
postcard out here. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
So
No, okay. So that and again, that kind of gets back to, like, you know, thinking back on that beginning of the root of why students come back, why return, why, you know, show up as your whole self.
Right.
And you know, as we're, you know, let me see where we at on our time. Yeah, as we're kind of rounding the hump of the conversation. Why is it important for students to be able to show up their whole selves?
Well, here's the thing. If students can do it, if you help students to really self-reflect, realize all the aspects of themselves, they may not completely come to fruition, every single one, but if they've accessed it at that level of self-awareness, if they graduate out of high school with that level of awareness, the time they spend after high school, whatever they do, it's more focused. Right? It's not like I need to find myself. I need to, you know, I'm going to do this. I really don't know what I'm doing in my life. It's more focused, and they have more time to make a difference, to make a change, and they use their youth in a way that is making the world better. And I've seen it. I'm so, like, immensely proud of the students that I've gotten to work with. And when I think about them and the things they've done, some have gone on to, trade on the stock exchange. Some have gone on to create nonprofits and help people overseas. And, as long as they're doing things that make them happy and contribute to making the world better, like, wow, that's, I had a little piece of that. And, right, little, like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a power in that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And just listen to your story, your personal story, and then your passion, they align, right?
Yeah.
Because that whole pivot that you made from law school to educator, right? Yeah. And make that's about aligning with your passion, right? And making sure that when you're working with students that you're helping them align with their passion. And it's a journey, right? We don't know what that is. Sometimes we end up in a job that we're just like, oh, here we go, I'm going to work again. You know what I mean? And those things, but that's part of the process, right? I point to this whole notion of we talk about failing forward and figuring out things through failure for businesses and in society, right? And ultimately, that's what growing up is. Like we make mistakes, we get in trouble, we learn through that stuff, and we're all a part of that for one another, right?
Oh yeah.
You just happen to be in the seat in education, right? In a seat where that impact is more visual,
and in a community that values it, right, which is also important, right. And it's interesting if you think about this area. It's very interesting what happened in this particular area specifically, and other parts of California, you can speak in the United States, around the same time. There are folks that started to set up schools and build schools because they felt that the industry of education was important. The relationship that's forged was important. Now, they were doing it at a time where, notions of diversity and these types of things were probably in the forefront of their minds.
Right.
But nonetheless, the idea that it was important for a student to really discover themselves, that was the core. And these schools still exist. A lot of places they closed down. They still exist here. Santa Barbara,
Right.
this county. And it's phenomenal. And places in the world, they're closing down. And you know what was beautiful? And I have a hard time saying it's beautiful because of the pain involved in it. One of the silver linings out of the cloud of the pandemic was that parents got to see how the sausage is made.
Yep.
They walked by the rooms like, is this what you're doing? I thought you were supposed to be on Zoom. Oh, no, they gave us a break, right. All the kind of stuff. And realizing the value of the relationship.
Yeah.
Right. A whole year and a half. And, I don't know what the impact's going to be.
Hopefully lasting, right?
Yeah.
Opportunity. You say silver lining. It's an opportunity.
It is
opportunity. Right? Opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to that failing forward. Like, it's unfortunate that we had to.
Yeah.
It took a global pandemic for us to have some of these lessons.
Yeah.
But that lesson, that focus on relationship.
Yeah.
If I'm going to editorialize, that's what moves us forward, right? Like relational leadership, making sure that you have those contacts, that folks know you when they're talking about, inclusion in their school. And they're like, wait a minute, I remember hearing this conversation.
Yeah.
Let me pick up the phone,
Without a doubt.
ring,
Yeah.
and start a relationship.
Yeah. Which is different. See, one interesting thing, what we learn in the disconnect, in the I'm going to live on Zoom, so on and so forth. What we learn in that is that you can still teach, you can still do the intellectual exercises, right? I'll send you a problem set. I'll send you a worksheet. You can write an essay. You can send that in. You can still do that. You might even have some quasi pseudo social interactions, using chat features. But the whole student piece, it's gone. It's lost, right? Because I can't see you. You're not there, right?
Yeah, we didn't use the language, but what you're talking about is mental and emotional wellness, right? Like, those are the punch words that they use in other industries.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But that's essentially what you're building for the students.
Yeah, and it almost become those words: social, emotional wellness, mental wellness. Those will become buzz phrasey, at least in the independent school world. So I've kind of avoided them because I didn't want to. But that's what it is. It's like these other slivers of who make you what you are beyond your intellect.
Right.
Right. It's like in this day and age. Let me tell you, this is the other secret. Right. This day and age, you don't need a teacher to teach you the intellectual. Right. You got Google.
Right.
Right. You got Wikipedia.
Right.
I go in there, read.
Yeah.
Right. Or you know what? YouTube videos. Right. If it's something I don't learn. So I don't need the teacher in the classroom to teach me anymore. But I need the teacher to see me. I need a teacher to hear me. I need a teacher to know who I am. Right. That's important.
And inspire you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Man. So, all right. Ultimately, what could it look like? Let's play a little visioning here.
All right.
You've been kind of involved in the Santa Barbara region here for a while.
Yeah.
You've had some great teachers, right? You've connected with some folks. Who've been giving you the real.
Yeah.
And you're aware of kind of what other assets are in the region.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, success. What's it look like?
Oh wow! I've been flirting with this idea. So think about this for a moment. Santa Barbara County, very interesting place. Unpretentious in some ways, right? Because, when you talk about California, LA, the Bay, maybe Sacramento for government, people don't really think about Santa Barbara in that way, right? It doesn't come to the forefront. Beautiful, breathtaking, interesting diversity in this area. The presence and the power of the indigenous community in the area is unique to other parts of California, other parts of the United States. So you have a lot of interesting elements already at play. You also have a flight right now from folks from the Bay Area and LA moving in, right? You can tell my housing prices, right? They're coming, they're coming.
I've heard them say we've become a Zoom town.
Oh yeah,
the Zoom boom.
No doubt. So all that's happening. So you have a very interesting mix in terms of population. So what I've been thinking about is an interesting idea. The idea of an inclusion lab, right? That the lab is Santa Barbara County. That the where the experimentation happens are all our schools. And the hypothesis is that all of our schools have things that each of the other schools can learn from. That if we truly partner up, right? Because here's the thing, we're going to compete in football. We're going to compete in softball, different sports. We won't compete, right? We won't compete in debate. We won't compete in spelling bees. We'll compete a lot. We even compete in enrollment, but we can't compete in inclusion. Because when you compete in inclusion, that's exclusion, right? You can't. So in inclusion, we have to be partners, right? We have to partner up, right? And how does that partnership look? It looks like not just the measuring part, but the sharing of resources, right? We have the potential to bring folks into our community that can help educate, help provide services, help provide resources that we can share as schools in the region. We have the ability to purchase and be part of different organizations, different research think tanks and tools that can help further us in our ability to serve our students. We can leverage our partnerships with the indigenous community, the communities that are coming into the area, the research university in our background, right, in the area, in order to make our schools better. So we have all these wonderful, but we just need that will, right? That it's not about, I'm not trying to take your enrollment. You do what you do, right? Want to make all our schools better, because no student in any of our schools should be sitting at their desk or on the playground or wherever feeling like they don't belong.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here kind of chuckling because it's like, facilitating Coffee with the Black Guy conversations. Everybody, post racial reckoning of the summer of 2020, everyone's kind of like, well, what do we do now? Well, sounds like a great plan that you got laid out there,
Yeah, no, because the reality is this: everybody's going to go from schools and do what? They're going to be part of society, right? If everyone leaves our schools with empathy in their hearts, we've built that capacity because we focus on the whole student, because we focus on inclusion, and they go out into the world, and in that world, maybe the local world of Santa Barbara, maybe also the greater world. Wow, that really is making change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's just, I say cliche way, education can make a change. Like this is how it is. Like this is the, let's break it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, and again, looking at our own lives, right? We can talk about it. I was actually just asked to, and I do need to get on this, but I was asked to, provide a statement for one of my teachers from high school who was impactful, because I guess my name comes up when he's talking about stories and stuff, and he's 60th birthday. They were like, can you give something for that? And it's like, I haven't talked to him in 20 plus years, but to be able to still have that connection of the impact that he's had in my life, and not just him, right? There's multiple along the way that you recall. And so, one comic fan to another, I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and that whole notion of great power comes great responsibility. And that's something that, as a journalist, I took to heart, right? People tell you their story. There's great power in that story. So I got to be treated responsibly. Now it's still stories, right? But there's great responsibility to change things with those stories, right? That narrative that you spoke about. How do we change our condition once we receive those narratives, once we share those narratives? And how does that arc happen? Well, we could do this all day, but I forgot that we do have some questions here. So let me try to check in to see if there's any questions. For those who are joining us via Zoom, feel free to drop any questions, comments, concerns in.
We don't want the concerns.
Well, you know, we hey, look, we want to talk about it all. We definitely want to talk about it all.
Concerns are exclusive.
Indeed.
Concerns.
Indeed. No, and this is gonna take me a little second here because I did get kicked out once again of the session, but we'll get in there to get some of the chat stuff. And although I did mention we have folks here in the audience, they will get a chance to ask questions, engage in a little after session, outside, socially distanced, taken care of. No worries. Yeah. Good. Yeah. And I'm just checking in to see. We have great people. People are here excited to work with you. What about bridging the economic gap? We talked about inclusion. We've talked about that, the underlying, independent public, that economic gap can wedge a lot of things.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the word we left out in the conversation, we left out the E, right, which is equity. And schools know what equity looks like, right? It could look like free and reduced lunch. It could look like financial aid. It can look like sponsorship. It could look like space, allocations of space in different ways, busing, etc. Equity in schools generally is constructed just to get you through the door. And then you're on your own, right? Got you to the door, now you're on your own. What does it look like? It looks like students in a particular school, hey, you know what? Different economic tiers in this school. So and a teacher says, we're going to do group projects, everyone. Everyone's group projects, and the project is on, X. Okay. All right. Hey, where you want to meet at my house? Okay, we're going to come to your house. Okay. I don't know how many bus passes I got to get to your house. I don't know if I can afford it. I don't, but the teacher can't tell the teacher about this. And then my teammates might just think that I'm not doing the work because I don't have the money, right? Or it might be, what, everyone, what we're gonna do? We're gonna be a group project. We're gonna share resources. I'll get the poster board. You get the mark. I don't got no money for the, right? So that it could look like that. It could look like some schools. You have students all going to the same school, but some students have the ability for tutoring. And service, right, outside of, right? But some students don't, right? It could even look like, I can't afford to go to the prom, right? Okay, so all that, schools don't care about that, but they need to. That's what I learned when we started dashboarding, right? We learned at Athenian, we created an inclusion budget. We literally had to create a line item in the budget called the inclusion budget. And what it paid for? It paid for dances. It paid for supplies. It's stuff that wasn't part of, that we weren't already doing, right? We realized you got to do that. And I think schools need to realize they have to do that. But if we partner up in a particular way, we may not need to lean so heavily into the dollar amount sometimes, because in a partnership with different schools, we might be able to help our students get to those outcomes, right? Inclusion lab.
So, well, now I'm stuck on this notion of an inclusion budget, right?
Yeah.
Again, back, post reckoning, everybody's like, what do we do? Like, where do these conversations of inclusion, acceptance, perspective, diversity, where do they fit in the conversation budget? Because we're about a year removed, and everybody should have had a conversation about a budget by now. Right? Yeah. Of course. And so how? I mean, an inclusion budget, you made that very clear. That's kind of I guess in government terms, they call it kind of like a bridge funding, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Absolutely.
I'm going to ask why that's important, but I'm going to also answer that. I've been working with, there's a school in the area, they brought up this notion of bling culture, right? And when you have students who are may not come from a privileged background, and they're put into an environment where the majority of those have the economic means.
Oh yeah.
When parents come pick them up in the Tesla, it's the bling culture. When they're going on vacations over the summer to Tuscany, right? That's bling culture. How do you help overcome that?
Okay, so most schools do what? They pretend like it doesn't exist, right? Let's just throw some cognitive dissonance in the mix, and let's pretend like it's take 2 cognitive dissonance and call me in the morning, right? And so that's what most schools do, right? And then if they don't do that, what's the next step they do? Let's try. Okay, no one can bring a car to campus. No one can do, right? No one, because trying to hide it again. Right. But why not the opposite? Why not? Why don't we have a fund for students who can apply for it, who can actually travel in the summer? Right. That we have dollars for that. Why not do the opposite? Right? And that type of thinking is somehow revolutionary because we're still operating the deficit, right? Model. And what if we moved around money to be able to do that? Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it really at the end of the day is moving around money. Yeah. Right.
Going from a deficit mindset to an abundance mindset.
Yeah. Like for example, I was working at one school, and the students were on financial aid, and we didn't want to talk about who the students were on financial aid, but everybody knew who the students were on financial aid because of the computers they had that were issued by the school. You see? Yeah. So why not get them the computer that everyone else has, right? You see what I'm saying? So these are things. Yes, this costs money, right? So how do you get those dollars? I think philanthropy is a significant piece in this, but it's also that when you got the call for your 60th birthday of your teacher, got the call. That's a call that you're giving back of your time. And you may not have treasure to give back in this moment, but you have time to give back. You may also give back your talent. But we need those that lead to come back and give back, right? Because that's the community, right? Because you go out into the world, whatever you have, your time, your talent, your treasure, you come back and you build, right? And we have the ability to do that. I think also that partnership piece, I've seen it in terms of sharing resources. I'll give you an example. 3 or 4 independent schools, and I think there's some public schools in the Bay Area. We had wanted some speakers, right? But we couldn't afford all of them. It's like, okay, you all take care of that one, and we'll invite, right? Now we got the benefit of all of the folks, right? And we're sharing the wealth. That sort of thing. And that's just one example. But it takes creativity, ingenuity, and honestly, why not do the ideation with students?
Hearing you explain that, I went back to the vision that I had in my head when you were talking about, coming home from school and seeing your mom working with all these, right?
Inclusion budget. She won't get paid though.
Well, right. But that was the baseline of that, understanding that there was a need there, and putting the pieces together, like advancing that idea to put money behind it, right? And I think that's the important thing, and we can follow that. Okay, wow, we got some good questions coming in here.
Audience too.
Okay, what is your approach to educating youth about empathy and inclusion as they navigate their world of social media?
Oh, navigating the world of social media. Yeah. I think it begins before the social media is navigated, right? In other words, if you begin it afterwards, it's almost a reactionary piece, right? To understand social interaction like this, before you go and try to understand the social media interaction, is important, because there's more depth to this. Right. There's more texture to this. So that when I go from here to that form of communication, which is more contrite. When it's tighter, it's harder to read, right? Into like what was, sometimes have you gotten a text before where the comma's not misplaced? You're like, I can't believe what they said. Or like, we all have grandparents, the all caps. You're like, oh, they're screaming at me.
Yeah.
But you see, there's a lot of emotional intelligence lost because of the format in which to build that layer first, and then build that so they have a greater capacity. That's number one. Number two is schools don't incorporate social media education.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not have students control the school's social media? Why not have students take pictures of what's happening in school and that be the social media arm of the school, right? That's your school Instagram, right? That's your school. Like, we're talking about what's going on in school today.
Yeah.
Why not do that?
Yeah.
What's the danger in that?
Right.
Right.
I don't see any, but it sounds like they would label that an innovative idea,
right,
but it seems real common sense.
Should be part of the inclusion lab.
Right.
I think yeah.
He's onto something there.
Yeah.
Got a question from Bruce about how can the business community partner with local schools to achieve a wide vision of inclusion. I think you hit on that a little
part
bit.
of it, but I'll throw one word out: the internships.
Yes. We don't currently have the capacity to accept questions from the audience. We do not have microphones for the audience as we're social distance. These questions could be included in the after session, or if Warren is able to help grab the question, maybe we can populate that from the audience into the chat. The folks at Santa Barbara Middle School will be reaching out to hook up with you. I got a note here that they're all in for this Santa Barbara Inclusion Lab.
Love it.
This recording will be made public afterwards. I think we're talking about where, but keep an eye out on what were we talking about? Social media for that. Chances are it'll be on the Coffee with the Black Guy YouTube channel. We're working on those details. Yes, and thank you for that as well. There's a thank you in here for taking the topic further and sharing creative choices to various scenarios instead of just talking in generals, which we do hear a lot of times, folks, particularly when we're looking to make change. So here's a question. What are your thoughts about Dr. Tracy Benson's author of Unconscious Bias in Schools, focusing on starting conversations in our schools?
I'm not familiar.
I'm not either. So, but at the root of what I do, I agree with that, right? The conversation starts it, right? And if we're starting at an issue of whether it's unconscious bias, whether it's inclusion, diversity, start with the convo.
All educators, I think, are also learners too, right? So we all, as you engage in the whole student process, you also engage in the whole person analysis of yourself. You become a better human being. It's part of the process. And so you have to engage in your unconscious bias, right? That you have. And there are some folks that have done more in recent years, a lot of research on the brain and over time and its interactions with people and how it can shift the ways in which you approach and see things and stuff like that. And so I haven't read that particular work, but I would say there's a lot of research right now that the work around unconscious bias is crucial. Right? You drive, you check your blind spot before you change your lane, right?
Right.
But when you teach, you don't.
Right.
But you should, right?
You should.
Yeah.
You absolutely
might hit somebody.
should. You absolutely should, right? And so in the early years of Coffee with the Black Guy, I spoke to a graduate class, and there was a student that was doing research that pointed out that this whole idea of sitting down and just having coffee on a and having conversations is supported by something called contact theory. And it sounds like that's something that would also be very similar as far as breaking down unconscious bias. Is the more you're in contact with quote unquote the other, the less other that becomes, right? And so when we're looking at how to start having the conversation about unconscious bias and inclusion and things, right? Like I think that is at the root of it, making sure.
And we have to create safe spaces for dialogue too, and that's important because what some this is also part of avoidance is, okay, you know what? I will be the most politically correct person in the room, right? But I won't say anything. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so honestly, think about all the relationships you built for a moment, right? Anyone at home, right? Anyone listening, think about the strongest relationships you have in your life right now. You've had arguments with those people. You've had disconnect with those people. You've had moments of hurt with those people, but you built around that and you became stronger as a result. So why can't we expect that there's going to be moments of disconnect, but we have to navigate it in order to build a stronger community, right? And we can't have that unless we're unafraid to actually have conversations, right? I don't understand. I don't know why. And I'm look, I'm going to ask a question. It may offend you, and I hope it doesn't, right? But I'm curious, right? And we should teach our students how to ask those questions.
Yes.
I hate this question. What people say, where are you from? Right? I hate that question, right? Where are you from?
Right.
Right? What is that? What do you mean? So, but what you really want to know is, what's your story?
Right.
Why don't you ask me that question?
Right.
I'll tell you.
Right.
Right. And so that's the thing. How do we ask the right questions? We can teach that skill. And then we would also ask the right questions.
And you make it sound so easy, though.
It sounds like it, right?
Sounds it, right?
Yeah.
Indeed. So we're rounding out some of the questions here. And so how do you get families who feel they have already done their part for inclusion privately, but into also helping in the school that their children attend? And so folks that feel like they've read the books, they've watched the documentaries, they've checked that box, let's just educate our kids.
Time, treasure, talent. You got one of those, right? See what you can you contribute your time, right? If you've done all the work, right? Come on down, help out, right? We use your wisdom.
Share about your journey.
Share it, right? If you have some talent, right? Hey, and if you've done it, right, in another capacity, then you got some treasure. Use some treasure, always.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. I think everyone has a in the very least can give a little of themselves in that capacity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good deal. All righty. So a good question from Lisa is, how do you imagine connecting with the large Latinx community in Santa Barbara County?
I think that public-private partnership is key, right? In the sense that different schools have served different populations, whether that be regionally, whether that be parochial schools, right? Different schools have served different populations. But if the schools can partner together, then we can link up students in larger cohorts together. And I got that inkling way back when. There's a woman that contacted me. She was a parent at a school in San Francisco, and the school that I was at is in Danville. So we're about an hour away maybe. And she contacted. She said, "Listen, I am the advisor of the BSU, the Black Students Union, and I heard you're the advisor of the Black Students Union at your school." Yeah. So what we want to do is actually get all the Black student unions of all these schools together. And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. Why come no one's ever done that before, right? It wasn't my idea, it was her idea. But that was the impetus. Like, yeah, we could share our resources and create larger cohorts. And by creating those larger cohorts, we can share what's working, what's not working, right? With each other, right? Within our communities. Like, how do you feel like a sense of belonging at your school? I do. Why? What are they doing for you? Oh, okay, let's link up. And so I think that's one of the things I would do. And what's beautiful about stepping into this role, I've realized, whenever you have something at your back, right? The Dunn school community, going back years, the alum of Dunn, the various students have gone through, the educators, the teachers, the professional community at Dunn, and the folks that are tied to it. Sometimes I have the Dunn mask. I wear the mask now, right? This is Dunn school, and people start with, hey, right? And so you get that and say, so that community is tied to a lot of the vibrant individuals in this area and beyond. And so when you come into a role like mine, and there's different heads of school, I hope on this call, and others I'll meet in school leadership roles, they represent not only that moment in time, but the entire continuum of that school and that those communities that come before. That's another way that we build a partnership with local communities, Latinx community, and beyond.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Dope, dope, dope. Okay. Do you feel that like these ideas are too radical for a place like Santa Barbara? Is Santa Barbara going to be readily acceptive of these changes?
Well, you know what? It's radical only when it's, to me, I go back to that original principle, idea. Everyone knows what it feels like to be excluded. If you ask any single person, no, I don't care what political background you are, religion, not faith, this, that, whatever, you ask anyone, is that a feeling that you want a young person to go through, feeling excluded? So no, okay, start there, right? That's not revolutionary, right? It's only revolutionary, seen as revolutionary when you don't understand it and you want to label it as such. And one of the reasons you can't is because a lot of, academic speech, different types of research, different types of jargon, phrases, people have brought it, let's strip it all down to the base thing. We want everyone in our schools to feel a sense of belonging. We want to get them there because we understand what inclusion looks like, and we want to give it some weight in our schools and invest in it. And we want everyone to leave our schools to be able to do good in the world, whatever they define as their good. That's not revolution. Nobody's going to challenge that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, and it also goes and hits on the idea of once you know better, do better.
Yeah.
We know better, and this is part of doing better. And sometimes that's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to seem and feel a little radical,
right?
To some, right? But we're doing better.
Oh yeah, and the only place it would happen is Santa Barbara too. It's too nice out here.
Right.
And you have to worry about the weather. Weather's great.
Well, that is, and the terminology you use, that it's a lab. Like I've used the terminology that Santa Barbara is a great petri dish. Like there's a lot of great assets that we have here in Santa Barbara, and we can really cook up some good stuff, right? And really shine, and let's talk about it, and bring it on home. Like what started in a petri dish that we care about right now? Oh, vaccines, right? And so we can really create something good, something useful for the whole that starts right here.
So we need a vaccine against exclusion. I like the metaphor. We can keep it going.
Look. See, we're going to get on this, and then we're going to get on the basketball court, right? Well, then there's that as well. Yeah. Indeed. Can we give some examples of what students said thriving looks like or feels like? Did you share that information with the students after you gathered it? So when you were speaking earlier,
very public process. In order to build institutional capacity for inclusion, if you go through an investigatory process to build a tool to measure inclusion, it is a process that you have to go through in concert with the community, where you're reflecting back to the community, because you're asking questionnaires and surveys, and you've taken questionnaires and surveys. Sometimes they promise you gift cards and certificates, you will never get them, right? Please take this survey for 5 minutes, right? But you never see your results. And so what sets in? Survey apathy, because you never see your voice represented in the data that you've been asked to give. So if you engage in a community in a process like this, you are having an interrogation with the community. The community is seeing how they are perceived within the broader whole, right? So it's a conversation that's happening, inclusion conversation. So you share that. And you share the data, and you also share the stories that come out, right, in the open-ended comments, the stories that come out as indicators of what those numbers mean. And sometimes the combination of the two matter. I'll give you an example. I had one day I came to my office, and there was 3 students, very fond of them. They were great students that had gone through the school, and they were upset. I said, Cal, we're upset. I said, well, what's going on? I said, we got to do better as a school. So what's going on? We got to do better as a school. I said, did I do something wrong? So no, the school, we have to do better. We don't have, and these are y'all young Black women. I said, we don't have any young Black men to ask to dance. We need to do better as a school. What they were saying was that the school did not do a good job in recruiting young black men. But I took this story, James. I took the story. I went to the board. The board meeting was like 2 days later. I was talking to somebody on the board. I said, hey, we need to do better. I was like, what do you mean? I said, we don't have young black men for the young black women who want to ask young black men to dance. And I was telling him the story, right? And I'm paraphrasing, like, and he was looking at me like, that's ridiculous, right? That can't be why we're doing school, right? Flash forward 2 years later, same person. Right. I showed him the data. He said, why are young black men not matriculating in this school? We need to do something about this. I moved the board, start a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. Same person.
Right.
2 years later.
Oh, wow.
He thought it was malarkey. That's what he said. I remember I never heard that word before. He said, wow, this is malarkey. I had to look it up.
Yeah.
I said, what is malarkey?
Was it Joe Biden?
No. Yeah, but nonetheless. So the stories sometimes may not resonate with you because you haven't had the contact. You don't understand what that means. You can't even put it in your mind what that matters to this young person, right? Whereas when they told me, I understood it.
The empathy gap was smaller.
Much smaller, right? I understood exactly what they're talking about. And so that piece is, and when he said it's a malarkey, let's go back to that moment. I didn't understand his disconnect. That's on me, right? Why did he have the disconnect? So there was a learning moment for me that he couldn't fathom it until he saw the numbers, right? Why? Because he thought in those terms, right? And the numbers matter. So there was something for me too to learn, right? And so that's what's beautiful about that disconnect, that moment. We're very close now, right? And I revisit that moment with him. We laugh about it. But what's beautiful is that it was a moment of us looking at a problem in a school together, having a disconnect over what that problem was, walking together, realizing, and then trying to address the problem, right? Yeah.
So you don't get to some place where you belong or where it's beautiful without a little discomfort and friction.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a great model.
Yeah.
That's a great model.
Yeah.
And I think, and one I've pointed out that exists in nature, right? If we think about anything, like we don't have the electricity to power this place without both positive and negative ions, right? We don't have, it's not just yin, it's yin and yang, right? We don't have just black, it's black and white, right? And so to be able to have this dichotomy of both positive and negative, I think is a model that we need to look at and explore. It's not all going to be peachy cream, right? We are stronger as a Santa Barbara community because we've had challenges together. Tragedy as a community moving forward. We have better connections, relationships with individuals. I think the class is over. We figured it all out, right? Good. I do see that there's some questions that continue to populate in, and also understand that for the interest of time, we're not going to sit here and pontificate all night about these things because I definitely could and would love to. But understanding folks have other things to do, and also how can folks get a hold of you?
Well, moving down, be at the Dunn School, and whether that want to navigate through Dunn or hit me at K Balaven at dunschool.org. That's going to be where I'll be. I'll be moving into the Valley. I'd love to meet with people, especially as we're coming out of this, come out to Santa Barbara, and all over Santa Barbara County. I really want to connect with folks. Right. I want to spend the summer really connecting with the members of the community and feeling a sense of place, right, with everyone. And whether that be through food, through activities, or we can have a lot of, or through coffee. I want a mug.
I can dig it. I can dig it. We'll get you taken care of. In closing here, you do talk about, I'm glad you brought it back to food because that was a reminder. There was something that you shared that kind of gave a great image of inclusion, right? And it takes it back to your family, right? Your daughter, she likes to fix food.
She likes fixed food. Everybody, we're all foodies. We love food.
Music to my ears.
Oh my goodness. And we love having people over, right? So that's another way you can connect. Come on over. But if you're coming over to our house, we're going to ask you a few questions. We're going to ask you about, if you have any food allergies. We're going to ask you if you have any dietary restrictions based on religion or culture, stuff like that. And then we're also going to ask you what you like to eat, right? And the reason we do that is because we don't want to serve anything on that table that you can't partake in. Mm-hmm. And if schools approached inclusion the same way, you never serve anything on the table that not everyone can partake in, right?
Man.
Then that's inclusion, plain and simple, right?
There's lessons to learn from all around us. We just got to open our eyes and pay attention.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cal, a very good pleasure. Welcome to our community.
Thank you.
Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to EYC, the Libero Theater. Thank you to the Montecito Journal. Who else am I forgetting here, Guy? Help me out, brother. Guy Walker with EYC is joining us. Definitely have to thank Comfort Food for helping us out with our audio.
Thank you to my friend James Joyce III with Coffee with the Black Guy. Thank you to my brother Kalyan Balaven. And thank you to the audience, both on Zoom, virtually, and those of you who are here tonight. This is the first. And I don't know if I said that in my comments earlier. This is a night of firsts. So I don't know if we mentioned the fact that this is the Libero's first in-person event since COVID. This is the first EYC Presents event. This is the first person of color who will head a 64-year-old institution. No pressure, brother. No pressure. And so I think this is wonderful. Thank you all for coming. I'm gonna give it back to James to close it out.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. I don't have anything else to add. I think that for folks that want to be able to share about this video in the next few days, again, keep an eye on social media. We'll have it up to be able to share with your colleagues in other schools and connect with us, right?
Yeah.
You know, this is about building community and relational leadership, right? And the way that we all improve and the way that we all lift up to where we belong to be is when we can all show up and be included, right?
That's right.
Right.
That's
and
right.
so let us all do that and make us a better community.
That's right.
Thank you so much for your
Appreciate it,
time.
brother.
You all have a great
All right.
evening. Thank you.
Thank you.